Hi everyone, quick disclaimer for you guys. This video was not intended to be 40 minutes long. A little bit about it is it's pretty much a Templar PvP build video. The thing was, with this video it's going to be in depth, so I'm going to be talking about what I'm running, how it all comes down, how it all comes together, my skill lines, all that good stuff. The reason why I'm running everything, it's a bit of a discussion slash build video. It has chock fulls of knowledge for you guys. I know a lot of you guys are experienced, but a lot of this is also for players who are learning the game, especially people who are trying to get into PvP. I know some of you guys watching this are from the RP community, and I've kind of been trying to get you guys to get into PvP, things like that, or just people in general that just really want to get into PvP. So this video is for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. I really do. I put my heart and soul into this, and I hope you guys, see the method and the chaos. You know what I mean? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the video because there's a lot of stuff on it, and if you guys like it, feel free to leave a like and a comment, and I'll see you guys here in a second. Thanks again. How's it going, everybody? This is Hilarious Obesius. Here you guys again with another ESO build video. So this is pretty much a different version of an old build video that I posted a little while back, my Crusader of Truth build video. The only difference now is that I'm running a different weapon setup, along with different skill setup as well due to the change of my weapons. My weapon damage has been pretty consistent with this build so far. I've liked it. I've liked it a lot with these past couple of patches, especially with how they changed damage over time. They pretty much nerfed the damage quite a bit. So I'm seeing a lot of people running around with burstier builds, just more direct damage. So with this build, it's better suited to play with the current state of the game. My stats are pretty good. You can honestly run this with solo. You can run in small groups. You can run in bigger groups with some adjustments. But overall, it's a pretty high performance build. It runs really well, and I'd be more than happy to show you guys how I run it, what I use, what food buffs I use, and all that stuff. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, let's start off with our race. Yes, I am still playing an Imperial. I really enjoy the raw stats I receive from the race, as well as the overall cost reduction I have built into it. It stacks really well with the cost reduction from Templar passives, which is a little something I'll cover later on down the line here. As for my Mundus Stone, excuse me, I am running the Warrior Mundus Stone. If you want to run a different Mundus Stone, that's up to you guys. But personally, I like stacking weapon damage on my build, so I do run the Warrior Mundus Stone. As you can see here, we are looking at about 20+K health, 36K stamina, as well as 16K magicka. Now the reason why I have 16K magicka with this build is I do have a couple of magicka based abilities that I do run on this build, which you guys are going to see here in just a second. Alright guys, so now we're going to talk about the armor sets for this build. Starting off with the first set, I am wearing Armor of Truth. I have one piece on my chest, two jewelry pieces with the protective trait, so I'm still getting resistances, as well as a maw front bar, sword and board back bar. The maw gives me penetration from the two-hand passive, and I'm running a Nirnhone to get that extra damage / healing from rally. With my back bar, I am running sword and board like I just mentioned, but I'm running a drain health poison, which acts as a double dot. There's a double drain health poison, but it acts as a double dot, and it gives me a little bit of a heal over time at the expense of a lower uptime for the poison damage. You could run double dot poisons or any other kind of poisons. Me personally, I just like running drain health poison for that health sustain. And for my second armor set, I am running Bonepike's Tatters. It's a vanilla set, I know. It's nothing fancy like New Moon Acolyte or anything like that. I just like the set. For me, I see it as an old reliable stamp sets like Hulk and Draugr. And what it does is it gives you 2 lines of stam recovery, a line of max stam, and with the 5-piece, it just gives you a lot of stamina as well as stam recovery. I actually stack it with Spring Load Infusion, but if you aren't able to get your hands on Spring Load Infusion, you could keep running Dubious. However, your magicka pool is gonna suffer quite a bit. But if that's not an issue for you, you could run this other drink that came out a little while back. It's called Pack Leader's Bone Broth. It gives you about 5k health and I think same thing, 5k stamina or something like that. It just gives you a lot of resources. Through raw stamina from spring loaded or that food, you just get a lot of consistent damage when Truth's not proc, but the uptime for Truth isn't going to be much of an issue. Now, also thanks to running Bone Pirate as my second armor set, this does allow me to run 5 medium, which gives me a 15% bonus to weapon damage. The 5th medium piece comes from my Bloodspawn helmet, which is medium, and my Bloodspawn shoulder is light, so I do receive the max Undaunted bonus of 6% extra resources. Not just that, by wearing Bloodspawn, I do get a line of stamina. I get a pretty decent ult generation from the proc, as well as a bonus to my physical and spell resistance when it is active. The thing about running in Cyrodiil and open worlds, you're just taking a lot of, you're getting hit by like a lot of little things, and it's just gonna keep you at Bloodspawn proc pretty often. but thanks to my setup, I'm able to run 5 medium, 1 heavy, 1 light for max resources, max consistent damage, and overall, this is a pretty solid setup, but you could run 5 heavy if you wish. Alright guys, so now we're going to cover my front bar and back bar abilities. But as we're doing that, we're going to discuss some of the more critical, more important passives that make this build what it is. One of the things I like about the Templar class, especially for Templar, is that it promotes a high damage playstyle. For example, Piercing Spear here gives me a 10% increase to crit damage um, whenever I have an Adric Spear ability, aka Biting Jabs. Biting Jabs is my main spammable here. Spear Wall gives me minor protection when I'm using my jabs, so it makes me a little bit tankier when I'm on the offense. As I'm jabbing, it can activate Burning Light, which is a damage proc that activates when you're using that skill. It hits pretty hard, and it helps you ramp up that Power Delight. For those of you who do not know what Power Delight is, I will be explaining that skill here in a second as well. Now, the most important thing about the skill line is actually Balanced Warrior. Balanced Warrior gives you a 6% weapon damage increase, as well as a 2600 increase to your spell resistance. So it gives you a little bit of extra defense against Magicka builds, and it just gives you a lot of weapon damage, which can stack with your medium armor passive if you're wearing 5 medium, and your Warrior Mundus as well. So overall, the skill line, like this skill line right here, this is where a lot of your damage comes from. Now moving on to the weapon line, I am running 2-hand front bar. I am running Rally as my first ability. Rally gives you my Major Brutality as well as Minor Endurance. Major Brutality giving you a 20% bonus to weapon damage. Minor Endurance giving you a 10% bonus to stam recovery. So it's good for damage, it's good for increasing your damage, it's good for increasing your sustain, and it actually comes with a bursty heal. So the longer you have Rally up before you recast it, the stronger the heal. This can also crit, and the crit modifiers are based off of weapon crit and its crit damage modifier / crit healing modifier. So it's a really strong heal, and it's just good for utility. My next skill is going to be Executioner here. It's pretty much the finishing move for low health targets. I like using it on tanky opponents if Power Light and Jabs is still not enough to take them down. I like to wind up a heavy attack into an Executioner, and for the most part it does get the job done. Some people don't like running an Execute, but personally I do. Now besides those two skills, another big reason why I run two-handed is due to the passive bonuses that it does offer. For example, with Battle Rush, whenever I kill a target, my stam recovery goes up by 30% for 10 seconds, and this can keep resetting if I keep killing people, so it's really good for sustain overall. The passive right above this one is Follow Up. So what this does is whenever I wind up a full heavy attack, my next direct damage ability does 10% extra damage. So that can be the Burning Light proc from Biting Jabs, it can be the initial damage from Dawnbreaker, even Executioner, Power Delight, pretty much anything that's direct damage. It's gonna do 10% more damage. And this can actually stack if it crits. So if I get a crit, then it's going to be another 10%. It's like having Minor Force pretty much when it crits, which is really nice. So I really like that passive overall. Now the last weapon passive for two-handed that I'm going to mention here is Heavy Weapons. Since I'm running a Maul, I received the Mace passive, so I ignored 20% of my target's physical resistance. So it just makes my target even squishier. However, you guys could run a sword for the extra damage, or you could even run an axe for the bleed. That's honestly your preference. I just like running the mace. A Maul, excuse me. Though every once in a while, if I am running a different ultimate, like Berserker Strike, I will run my two-handed sword. Now, I'm going to talk about the last skill of my bar, which is Power Delight. Pretty much what this does, it does X amount of damage. However, it also reflects 20% of any damage I inflict on my target for a 6-second window. The max copy damage is based on max stamina and not weapon damage. So that's the main reason why I run 36k stamina, is so I can have as big of a tooltip on power light as I possibly can. It's a really strong skill because it afflicts your target with minor fracture, which reduces their resistances by about 1300, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it still helps, especially when you're fighting tanky opponents. Not just that, it does reflect a lot of damage as well. They used to have it where it reflected 20% of the damage inflicted on the target overall, so other people could help ramp it up, but now it relies on the user itself. So, which is why you need a lot of damage on your builds for Templar, so you can get a pretty solid power to light tick. Another thing about the skill now is that it also got buffed. It can crit now, so power light's really nasty and it hits really hard, and it's a very crucial skill for any Templar build. It's bursty, it hits hard, it has a little debuff, and it does use up some of the passives from Dawn's Wrath. So how Power Light uses the passives in Dawn's Wrath mostly comes from Prism. So whenever you activate a Dawn's Wrath ability, it gives you a little bit of ultimate every 6 seconds. So this can help with getting your offensive ultimate up or your defensive ulti up. It's just really good for ult sustain. So you get the damage, you get the fracture, and you get the old gen from Prism, which is pretty damn solid. Talking about the Dawn's Wrath skill line as well, it is good for group play because what Illuminate does is it gives you minor sorcery. Well, it gives your whole group minor sorcery. So that's a 10% increase to spell damage. So it's really good if you have magical people in your group. And last but not least, Restoring Spirit under Dawn's Wrath gives you a 5% cost reduction for health, stamina, magicka, and ultimate abilities. This stacks with the Imperial Racial passive of 3% cost reduction. So overall, you get an 8% cost reduction with this build if you run an Imperial. I think the Imperial Racial passive with Restoring Spirit just complements each other really well, which is why I like to run Imperial with a Templar, especially a Stamp Templar. So pretty much my front bar sums up with Rally, Biting Jabs, Executioner, Toppling Charge, and Power to Light. Toppling Charge is my main stun. It is my main CC ability, which is the reason why I run Spring Loaded Infusion, because it does cost a bit of magicka. So it's very important to have a decent magicka pool with this build, which is why I run that food. You could swap this out for Binding Javelin, D-Swing, or even Turn Evil. Personally, I just like the idea of having a dependable stun that also acts as a gap closer, and it also does proc off balance, so it does let me activate my truth. So as soon as I top charge my target, I hit him, and it activates my Armor of Truth. Speaking of which, we're gonna discuss more in detail why I'm running Armor of Truth, and I'm gonna demonstrate why it's a very good set with this current patch, even more so than the past couple of patches. Alright guys, and last but not least, I am using Dawnbreaker Smiting as my ultimate. I enjoy the skill. I have played with other skills like the Adric Spear ultimate, and mostly Berserker Strike, but Dawnbreaker Smiting is my go-to ultimate. I like the stun, I like the damage that it does on your target. It helps me wind up my Power Light even more. Not just that, it does give me 3% extra weapon damage just by having it slotted. However, if you guys want to use another ulti, that's completely your preference. There are a couple other good alternatives here. Berserker Strike, the Spear ult. If you're running in big groups, you could run Nova. Honestly, you have a couple options. It's just me personally, I like having Dawnbreaker for that extra damage and the burst potential that it has. As for my back bar, we're going to discuss the first ability on my back bar, which is Race Against Time. It's under the Psijic Order skill line. In my opinion right now, it's better than Shuffle. The reason why I say it's better than Shuffle is Jabs doesn't get mitigated by Shuffle anymore, so I see no point running it. if you're gonna get hit by a bunch of AoE, you're probably gonna die anyway. So I don't know. I just like running race against time over shuffle now. The reason being is that having it slotted gives you a shield. Not just that, it removes snares, gives you immunity for 2 seconds, which is it's half the time that shuffle provides. But it doesn't cost stamina; it costs magicka instead. But the big reason why I choose this over shuffle is minor force. It gives me a 10% damage modifier when I crit, so it gives me 10% more critical damage. So that stacks with the Templar passive as well as any champion points that you apply on critical damage. So for me, it does. I get a 90% modifier when I have that ability activated. So it just gives you so much damage, and I see no reason not to run that skill. Getting that skill is a bit of a grind, so if you don't want to get that skill, run shuffle. Shuffle's still good. It's just I have this skill now, so I would rather much just run that over shuffle. Before I move on to the second ability on my back bar, I'm going to talk a little bit about the weapon line for Sword and Board. So Sword and Board it gives you a lot of defense, but it gives you a lot of damage when you're weaving. It absorbs. You take less damage for projectiles, so magicka or you know, arrows pretty much. On top of that, when you bash and you're bash weaving, it just gives you a lot of damage. So if you're on your back bar, you can still do a decent amount of damage. Even more so on pugs or really squishy targets, you can still kill people on your back bar. But anyways, we're gonna move on to my second ability, which is Ransack. Now, what Ransack does is it applies Major Fraction on your target, which reduces their physical resistance by 50 to 80. But on top of that, it gives you minor protection for 10 seconds, which is a lot longer than if you use jabs. So if you're on your back bar and you need that extra tankiness, just drop a Ransack on a target and just keep moving. Or if you're on the offense, Ransack did get quite a bit of a damage reduction, but it still hits decent. It's not a very weak skill. It's mostly for utility nowadays. But if you're really good at bash weaving, which by the way, if you're on Sword and Board, Ransack is actually cheaper from the passives under Sword and Board. But bashing is also cheaper on your Sword and Board bar, so you can honestly bash weave your targets down if they're really squishy. But overall, Ransack's just good for utility. It gives you minor protection. It makes your target squishier. And if you have a poison on your back bar, you can proc it as well. So it's just a solid ability to have as your number 2. If you don't want to run Ransack, you can honestly run Deep Slash. But that's honestly your preference at that point. I just like running Ransack. After Ransack, I am running Resolving Vigor, which obviously you want to run that on most Stam builds. I would say Stam Necker is an exception, but we're playing on Templar here, so I do recommend running Vigor on your back bar. I like running it, and on top of that, if you're by a keep and you have Combat Medic under support completely unlocked, you get a 20% bonus in your healing, not just for Vigor, but also for any source of healing, which is pretty damn strong. For my fourth ability, I am running Extended Ritual. Extended Ritual is acting as a purge / AoE heal over time. This is good for solo and group play because it's just a lot of heal over time. Not just that, more importantly, it does also act as a purge. It removes 5 debuffs, so there's that. On top of that, it does add minor mending to yourself, which increases your healing by 8%. So I also see no reason not to run this skill. It just gives you a lot of utility and a lot of healing overall for solo and group play. Last but not least is Restoring Focus. This is your defensive buff. So what it does here is it gives you a Major Resolve, which increases your physical and spell resistance by 50 to 80. Most notably, however, it does give you Stam every second. The equivalent of 480 Stam recovery to be exact. It's received It's received a lot of buffs over the last couple of patches, and it's definitely a great skill to run. I remember a little while back, not a lot of people would run it just because it had a low uptime and it would cost a lot of magicka, but now it's a really damn good skill, and I highly recommend it for anyone as a go-to defensive skill. As for my backbar ultimate, I am running Spell Wall. What Spell Wall does is it makes it where my character is blocking for 6 seconds, but it gives me freedom of movement, so I can still run around really fast, I can still LOS really well, and I can actually switch bars, and it'll have it where my character's automatically blocking everything. So this is good for offense and defense. For defense, because if you're trying to get some line of sight, dropping this will keep you really mobile, and at the same time it'll let you block all the attacks, and actually you get to reflect any incoming projectiles that are sent your way. Or offense, you just, if you're trying to avoid getting CC'd in a fight, just drop this ulti, go to your front bar, drop your burst. I'll let you do that uninterrupted. So overall, it's a really good skill. You could run different skills like Remembrance or Undo, but personally, I like running Spell Wall. Alright guys, so we're going to demonstrate the build stats, unbuffed and buffed. So unbuffed here, we got about 18k resistances for spell and physical for front bar, and back bar we got a little over 20k for spell, and same thing with physical resistance, we're a little over 20k as well. So we're going to buff up with our rune, and we're going to check out our stats once more. Okay, that's our defensive buff right there. We're at about 23k for our resistances on our front bar, and our back bar we're hitting about 26. This is not counting blood spawn. With blood spawn you can actually hit 30k plus resistances on both front bar and back bar. But now we're going to demonstrate this sitting on the rune. So on the rune, you just get a lot of resistances. We're almost hitting 30k on our back bar, and we have about 26 on our front bar. However, it's going to be very rare that you'll actually be on the rune unless you're like in a tower farm or something like that, or in a very confined space like an Imperial City, for example. But overall, you just have solid resistances with this build. Now we're going to go ahead and use our offensive buffs: Major Brutality, Minor Force, Major Savagery, all that good stuff. So here we are winding up our buffs. Now we're just going to lay on this dummy. So with Power to Lie, Toppling Charge, I got Biting Jabs up and running. Now Truth's procced. So as you're going to see down below, look how my timer resets. Truth keeps on resetting. As long as your target's off balance, if you keep doing damage to them, it's going to keep resetting the timer on Truth, so you can have a really strong uptime with this build, especially if you're fighting outnumbered or 1vx. You have a lot of targets that are off balance, and any one of them would just proc Truth for you. So as I mentioned before, Truth did get a bit of a buff in my opinion, and that right there justifies my opinion. You could run a different offensive set, but personally I enjoy running Truth because of the high uptime that you have nowadays with it. Alright, so now we're going to cover our CP allocation, starting off with the Steed. I have 66 points into Ironclad. It gives me a 22% direct damage mitigation. The reason why I have a lot of points in Ironclad this patch is direct damage over time doesn't hit as hard as it used to, so I gave up some points from there and I put it into Ironclad. And so far it's helped me a lot. It's helped me with my survivability now that people are having to run burstier builds, since the pressure from dots isn't exactly there anymore. I do have 55 points in resistant. By running 55, it allows me to have 3k crit resistances on the build. And I have 28 points in the medium armor focus. As I mentioned earlier, I did give up a lot of points from dot mitigation under the lady, and I put it into medium armor focus because in my opinion it's more useful having it there. Not just that, I do get a shield from the 120 bonus under the Steed, which can stack with the Sigil Quarter Shield. Now, with the lady here, I have 23 points in the thick skin. I still have dot resistances, because you still see dots out there every once in a while. So it's just good to have. It's good to have those points there with the mitigation. And of course, I have 49 in Hardy and 49 Elemental Defender, so I have an 11% damage mitigation to both physical and spell-based damage. I also have Unchained unlocked, which makes my next SAM ability after I break a CC cost 80% less. So if I get CC'd, I'll break the CC and drop a Vigor or a Rally. So it really helps with survivability. And I don't have any points in the Lord, so we're going to move on to the Tower. I have 51 in Warlord, which gives me a 19% bonus to CC break cost. So it makes, breaking stuns a lot cheaper. I have 39 points in the Sprinter. I used to have more, but I honestly don't see the need to have like a million points in the Sprinter. So I dropped some of the points and I put it in other places, which you'll see here in a second. Of course, I still have 120 under the Lover with 64 in Mooncap, giving me a 13% bonus to stam recovery and 56 points in tenacity, giving me a 12% bonus to resources I get from heavy attacking. And this also allows me to unlock wind running, which gives me a small boost to my movement speed, and when I'm sprinting, my health and magicka recovery is increased by 10%. So overall, it just helps me with sustain overall, with keeping my purges up and even getting a little bit of health in between my vigors and stuff like that. Now with the Shadow here, I have 44 in Tumbling, which gives me a 17% bonus to makes roll dodging 17% cheaper, and I have some points in the Shadow Ward because I do block every once in a while, and this stacks with Sword and Board, the Sword and Board passives that make blocking cheaper. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the blue side of my CP allocation. Starting off with the Atronach, I have 66 points into Master at Arms, which gives me a 22% bonus to my direct damage. So pretty much Ransack, Burning Light, Jabs, Power to Light, all that stuff gets affected by that now. Jabs used to be affected by Thaumaturge, but now it's by Master at Arms, so I'm stacking more into that now. I also have 44 points into Physical Weapon Expert. Yes, I could have slotted 81 points into Master at Arms, stuff like that, but I feel like I'd be overstacking. Plus, in my opinion, this is a better CP setup because it makes my light heavy attack weaving in between skills a lot stronger, so my damage is more sustained. It's more sustained, more consistent, and it allows me to actually pressure my targets without dots, but with light heavy attack weaves. So overall, it just really helps me maintain the pressure on targets. Not just that, it lets me kill pugs with light and heavy attack weaving. I also have 11 points into Shattering Blows, which makes hitting shielded targets a little bit easier for me. But most importantly, is so I can unlock Tactician. So it sets my targets off balance whenever I roll dodge any of their attacks, which allows me to have a really, really strong uptime with Truth. Alright, and while that being said, let's move on to the Ritual. So, thanks to dots getting nerfed, I was actually able to revamp my CP for the Ritual, which has allowed me to revamp the Atronach. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually running 49 points in the Mighty, which that hasn't really changed. I've always been running it like that, which gives me an 11% bonus to all physical-based damage, which stacks with Master at Arms. I have 56 points in the Precise Strikes, which gives me a 20% bonus to critical damage and healing. With a Templar, that turns into 80% because of your Aedric Spear passive. The only thing it doesn't affect is your critical healings. Your critical healings at 70%, not 80%. And then, of course, I have 44 points into Piercing. I took everything from Thaumaturge and I put it into Piercing. So now I'm rocking about the same, a little bit more penetration than Spriggans, but without running that set. That plus Minor Fracture and Major Fracture, and then Exploiter from the Ritual, which lets me do 10% more damage to off-balance targets. I'm just ignoring a lot of resistances, and I'm just doing way more damage on my targets now than if I was running dots. So overall, it's a pretty solid setup. another bonus is last stand. So if I get really low, it gives me major heroism. So I'm just like getting a bunch of ulti if I do get low, and if I'm able to turn the fight around, I'll have an ult ready to go. Or I can use that ult. I can use my shield wall, thanks to major heroism. It lets me get it off early, and it helps you survive in fights. Overall, the sky's the limit with this build. We have pretty solid stats all around in terms of resources, damage, and resistances. I run this solo. I can run this in small groups, and with some adjustments, you can even run in really big groups. That's really up to you guys. I even run this for overland content, just running around. And I've even done veteran dungeons with hard mode on for most vanilla dungeons. So overall, it's just a pretty good setup to have for a Templar with the current patch. So I highly recommend you guys try it out. If you guys have any comments or anything like that, feel free to leave a comment down below. And I hope you guys do enjoy the video. And if you do, leave a like and feel free to subscribe to my channel, because I will be posting more content here in the near future. I got some build videos planned out. And again, thank you guys for all the love and support. I really do enjoy making this content for you guys. I do apologize if the video was kind of long, but I really wanted to go in depth with the video and kind of explain how it all comes together. Well, that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.